Hey guys, this is Paul, and today I'm going to be talking about developing weak areas of ours, but more specifically, how sometimes that's not always a good thing, that sometimes it's better to just be yourself. And the inspiration for this video came from, because I recently just was able to get the Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney trilogy for 3DS thanks to a gift card. So it had the first three Phoenix Wright games all in one package. And as I was replaying these phenomenal games, there came a time when Phoenix helped defend Miles Edgeworth in court and won. And mind you, Miles Edgeworth is an ISTJ like myself, albeit a lot more of a stick in the mud than I am. And after Phoenix, spent 3 days trying to help him out, all he could say was, "I appreciate it, right?" And then Phoenix's assistant, Maya, the super energetic ESFP, is like, "Oh, come on, Edgeworth. Is that really some way to thank him? You should be more like..." And then Detective Gumshoe comes in the room and is like, "Whoa, thank you so much, Mr. Wright. I'm so happy that you got Edgeworth acquitted." It's something like that. And Maya's like, "Now that's how you say thank you." So then Edgeworth clears his throat and says, "Whoa, thank you." And then he says, "Oh, I have a headache." So that was an example of an ISTJ exercising a lesser function that they haven't developed as much, which in Edgeworth's case is introverted feeling. He doesn't prefer to really show his emotions that much, and that was very taxing on his energy levels. So I wanted to sort of talk about that today, give a couple of personal examples and just general examples of why sometimes developing our weaknesses isn't always a good thing. For instance, whenever I take the Myers-Briggs, I always, except that one odd day, but not counting that odd day, I always score really, really, really high on the judging and perceiving scale. Like, I only know of one person that's mistyped me as a perceiver, but that's... Anyway. So, there have been times where a couple of my friends, including some other J's, but maybe who scored lower on the scale, are like, "Paul, lighten up. Won't you try something new or be a bit more easygoing?" And so a couple of times I've tried it. Like, when I go on the mission trips, for example, at Catholic Art Work Camp, with the exception of 1 year, in the 6 times I've went, they've always told us 5 out of the 6 years our assignment the day before we did it. To me, that's like super stressful because I like knowing things in advance. I don't like surprises. I don't like things jumping at me, stuff like that, because I need to take my time to think through it. And this video would be way too long if I described all that. But suffice to say, it was a challenge, and it was something that God really had to work through me during that trip, because I was like, okay, God, this is not something I'm good at, but I'm going to try my best to be easygoing. But on the other hand, that's also been my downfall on a few occasions. Like, sometimes when I'm too easygoing, I end up being stressed out at something where my friends were trying to make me happy. Like, as awesome as their efforts were, and if you're watching this video, don't think that I'm criticizing you at all. I'm criticizing myself as a disclaimer. But 2 friends of mine, who happen to be ENFP, decided to plan this really cool birthday outing for me. And first of all, you're thinking, an ENFP planning? That's exactly what I said to her, too. But they managed to do it, and they did it surprisingly well when they put their mind into it. But then the hard part for me was that they wanted it to be a surprise. So as the day comes, I am just like pacing around the house so much that my mom and sister are like, "What's up? You look so worried." I'm like, "I'm not used to surprises. This is hard. This is not something I'm used to." And as soon as one of them blurted out the name of the place where we were going, I immediately lightened up, because I was like, "Oh, okay, now I know where we're going." So in other words, like, they don't like it when I'm, how do I word this? When I'm not fully enjoying myself in their presence. And the fact that I was stressed out about the lack of structure and routine, that was something that was a bit hard for me to adjust to. But the thing is, not all structure and routine is a bad thing. I mean, heck, if it wasn't for someone who actually keeps track of things, like when would things ever get accomplished? Like, most of my friends, I have to remind them over and over and over again, like, hey, we said we would hang out 2 weeks ago. Don't forget the deadline. And sometimes keeping track of deadlines, I mean, I know I normally wear a watch, but it got damaged, and usually I'm like, okay, 3 minutes left until we need to move on to the next thing. So that's just the J in me. I'm sure most of you have other letters that are a bit more high up. Like, for instance, there might be some of you that are higher up on the thinking scale than I am, because that was actually one of my weakest letters in the test, was the thinking and feeling. Maybe it's because I'm Roman Catholic and, we're asked to love one another and all that, but I know some thinking types that go out of their way to try to be caring and comforting, and then it ends up seeming kind of forced in the process. Like, it's almost as though they wish that they could just sort of feel in their own way without people telling them how to do it. And in my experience, that's the key with developing weaker functions, is it really, for the most part, has to be our own decision. We can't just have someone come up to us and say, like, hey, Paul, buddy, why don't you try being an extrovert for a day? I'd be like, I can try, but that would be kind of hard to do. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are days when I try that, but then I end up wearing myself out in the process. So, baby steps, as they say, is often a good strategy I found. Like, taking things one step at a time. Don't necessarily do things cold turkey, meaning just go all out. It's like an addiction. People that are, say, addicted to cigarettes don't give up on smoking in a day. They have to gradually whittle down how many cigarettes they smoke before they give it up completely. So if this ever happens, let's say that someone wanted to be more of an ISTP instead of an ISTJ. That would take time, because the J is so up there that of all the functions, that's the one that's the least disputable. It just takes so much effort to go with the flow that sometimes it literally makes me have a panic attack. But on the other hand, on the rare occasions when I have been able to pull it off, I find it surprisingly refreshing, almost like it's a vacation. Like, yeah, this whole perceiving stuff might not actually be as bad as you think. Especially when it comes to restaurants, which is the exception. Usually I'm pretty easygoing when it comes to food. People say, what do you want for dinner? I'll be like, something edible. Usually I'm not too picky, so there's the exception there. And then also, I think the final point I'd like to make is, say, the difference between sensing and intuition. Because I don't know of too many people that are borderline on that, but I know for a while people used to think I was an intuitive type, and that's because, for me, I found it easier to develop that function. Maybe it's because I played too much Professor Layton, and so I see examples of intuition being used, and I'm like, dang, that's so cool, I'd love to be like that sometimes. But it takes effort, it takes time. For some intuitive types, they're just naturally thinking about all these different angles. Me, I'd have to go to the park for 2 hours, just nonstop go oh, I get it now. And most of the time longer, maybe a week or a month to come to that conclusion. So the benefit to developing our weaker functions is that sometimes we can, as St. Paul says, be all things to all people. But on the downside, it can also expend a lot of our energy and can occasionally make things worse. So we need to take things at our own pace, and we need to never tell ourselves never, shall we say. If you're an ISTJ like myself and you say, oh, there's no way I will ever be more of a feelsy type, well, you're limiting yourself, in essence. And I know we ISTJs love doing that because it's safe, but sometimes risks pay off. I mean, look at Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. A courtroom being fun. That may sound skeptical to most of you, but once I gave it a try, I became a diehard fan. I have owned or own every Phoenix Wright game that's been released in North America, to put it into perspective, because that series is just amazing. Anyway, this video is getting a little bit too long, but hopefully you got a perspective on the pros and cons of developing weaker functions, and if there's anything else you want me to cover in my Myers-Briggs videos, please let me know. And until I come up with my next video, keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless. Bye.